Yeah. Jihan?
Iya, Pak.
Ijazwani has joined?
Yes, Pak. Pak
Yeah.
Aijaz in, yeah.
Yeah, I am here. Hi.
Hello, good morning, sir. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Yeah. Okay, now we begin. Yeah. A very good afternoon. Yeah. Very good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our international webinar organized by Center for Southeast Asian Studies, Indonesia. The title of today's webinar is Baren Uprising of 1990. Uyghurs continue to fight for their rights. So this is our title. We have very distinguished speakers from various places. We have Dr. Ijazwani, a research fellow at the Observer Research Foundation, ORF, Mumbai, India. And we also have Mr. Tegu Santosa, a lecturer at the State Islamic University, Sharif Hidayatullah, Jakarta, and chairman of the Media Network of Cyber Indonesia. And we also have Ibu Dina Prapto Raharja, an associate professor international relations, Binus University. And we are expecting one more speaker, Mr. Umar Khanat, but he is unfortunately ill. We are waiting his speech to be read by somebody else. Okay, but we have today we have a very sad news. One of our speakers, Dr. Mahesh Ranjan Devata, he could not join us today because his beloved mother passed away. We are expressing our deep condolences to him. Very sorry, we didn't have Mr. Mahesh Ranjan Devata. His mother passed away this morning. Very sorry. So now we will begin our webinar. We have almost 2 hours. We have a webinar session, and half an hour we will have a question and answer. So now let me introduce our speakers. First we will begin with our first speaker will be Mr. Ijazwani. Ijazwani, please. Profile. Yeah, Ijazwani. He is a research fellow at Observer Research Foundation, Mumbai. He is currently working on the project Kashmir Conflict, Managing Perceptions and Prospectus for Peace, designed in the form of questionnaires and surveys with key stakeholders. The project is based on the Kashmiri youth perspective. Ijaz also tracks the minorities of China, Uyghurs, and radicalization in Pakistan and Greater Central Asia. He is widely published in international and national peer-reviewed journals. He has received fellowships from Xinjiang Social Science Academy in Urumqi, Xinjiang, and the University Grants Commission, New Delhi. He is also a UKAIS fellow, where he undertook a 2-year program, the European Union and Central Asia in the international system. He studied in Germany, Uzbekistan, and other places. He is very fluent in English, Urdu, Hindi, Kashmiri, and Uyghur languages. Now the floor is yours, Mr. Ijazwani. You have 20 minutes to present your views. Thank you.
Thank you for your introduction, and thank you for inviting me on this issue, the Baren incident. Am I audible?
Yeah, yes, that's right.
So, see, Xinjiang, it is the land of, I would say, contested histories. Because if we go through the historical past, it is only for 415 years Chinese somehow ruled it till 1949. So that created the contested history, created the centrifugal tendencies, and those tendencies were suppressed by China from time to time. Especially after 1949, especially after Communist Party of China started ruling Xinjiang. Somehow after 1949, when CCP started its rule in Xinjiang, they targeted, from the inception of the CCP rule, they targeted Uyghur Muslims and other Muslim minorities of Xinjiang and said they are aliens, they are foreigners. In this, Mao's wife herself said that they are foreigners. What is special about them? In 1957 and in 1966, when Cultural Revolution started, she stressed on it, and most of the Uyghur culture was banned. Their mosques were destroyed. They were used for pig breeding. They were used for settlement of incoming Hans. They were used for stores. They were used for other purposes. Qurans were burned. Quran was burned every time. And every time, whenever there were Uyghurs, they were asked to shave their beard, that Islamic thing. And even the circumcision was banned. The first proponent of Islam, when a boy gets birth in any Muslim society, he is being circumcised within 40 days or either within 37 years. It was banned, totally banned. So, on the other side, what they did, economically, they exploited most of the Xinjiang. And that created a sort of alienation among the Uyghurs. And this alienation from 1949 till 1979, till 1978, was somehow banned, or somehow this alienation was somehow suppressed. But in 1978, when China started economic reforms, by those reforms, China reviewed socio-economic policies at third plenum of the 11th Central Committee held in Beijing, marking the early signs of country's acceptance of liberalization and a change in the CCP's attitude towards Xinjiang Uyghur Muslims. For example, Article 37 of the 1982 Constitution allowed the state to protect normal religious activities. What are those normal religious activities? When I went there, when I went to Xinjiang, to Kashgar, to Khotan, to Turfan, to Yarkand, I saw those normal religious activities are being supervised by CCP members, by Hans, by police officials, by security forces. I am talking of 2013. And by the time China's relationship with Pakistan also strengthened in 1978, when the highway opened for public use between Pakistan and China was started. So Xinjiang was now, after 1978, Xinjiang, the Uyghurs were opened to external world. For example, Pakistan to somehow, and Pakistan started sending religious literature and Muslim religious teachers, mullahs. They educated Uyghurs in the newly created madrasas, because after 1978, we saw some sort of change. But secondly, the environment of the Xinjiang, for example, in Afghanistan, there were during the Soviet times, when Soviet was ruling it, there was some sort of jihad. But when we see Uyghur Muslims, they were agitating against Chinese rule. For example, in 1980, 1981, 1985, 1987, they were agitating against Chinese rule on socio-economic factors. Socially, they were pressurized to give up their culture. Economically, they were alienated from their own land in the new economic sector. All the all the facilities new economic facilities when it comes to oil and gas, when it comes to industries, when it comes to infrastructure. Most of the workers were Hans, which we can see today also. So the Uyghur protests culminated in Baren incident of 1990, when a group of Uyghurs simply they criticized the local government policies and started mass protest against Chinese to establish the independent state of Eastern Turkestan. Now, there started the thing. Chinese government sources said that 6 police officers and 15 demonstrators were killed in these protests. But secondly, they said that it was the militants or mujahideen of Afghanistan, Uyghur mujahideen of Afghanistan who were trained there. They were enforcing the Sharia and they were trying to culminate into Eastern Turkestan movement. But it is not true. Actually, it was the movement started by indigenous Uyghurs against the Chinese socio-economic exploitation of the region. Then, to suppress this movement, Beijing started Strike Hard campaign in 1996. What they did under 1996 first Strike Hard campaign, they targeted the separatism, illegal religious activities, and they monitored each and every activity in mosques as well as madrasas. But by the time they also migrated more and more Hans to Xinjiang. And that is because today we see most of the northern Xinjiang, Urumqi, Xinji, they are dominated by Hans. About 90% of 98% of the population of Xinji is of Hans. And only 8 to 10% are Uyghurs because it is the most industrialized zone. So what they did, they they closed the madrasas and they arrested Uyghurs on large scale. According to some estimates, more than 25,000 Uyghurs were arrested. On being, they kept a beard. Their women were having veil. They covered their face with veil, which we call burqa. But these things produced the strike hard campaign of CCP proved counterproductive because we see in 1997 in Yining, hundreds of Uyghurs protested. So it was an anti-Beijing protest. It has nothing to do with terrorism or radicalization. They came with after 2000 when they saw that separatism and centrifugal tendencies within Uyghurs are increasing because of the exploitation. They never checked their policies, rechecked their policies. But what they did, they came with Great Western Development Project. With Great Development Western Project, the CCP believed that growing economic disparity between Xinjiang and the mainland was primary reason for increased anti-China sentiment and this centrifugal tendencies. They thought that this Great Western Development Program will diminish if the Uyghurs could be lured with financial prosperity. The strategy aimed at to integrate and assimilate the restive Uyghur population with mainland China. It envisaged developing infrastructure, railway tracks, airport, oil and gas pipelines, power grids, industries, telecommunication networks, and others. And it also attracted foreign direct investment. But even though between 2000 and 2009, China invested $25 billion in Xinjiang, and most of them most of these investments came from Chinese central government. The Western Development Project created new platform to attract more Han migrants. So Uyghurs remained the same. Their socio-economic fabric remained the same. But what Western Development Program did, more Hans migrated to Xinjiang, and it soon became clear that the program was only meant to increase the Han population and did not benefit Uyghurs in any aspect, which we can see a 2010 population survey revealed that 2.5 times more Uyghurs worked in primary sector. 2.5 times more Uyghurs worked in primary sector than Hans. On the other hand, the Han workforce in secondary and tertiary sector outmatched the Uyghurs by more than 6 times. So the Han domination in every socio-economic sphere fanned further the ethnic discord with indigenous Uyghurs, who were before 1949 were the indigenous people and who were owning everything, whether it were the traditional industries, traditional land, traditional trade. They were owning everything, but now they were cornered because of the Chinese communist policies, and most of the new sectors were dominated by Hans. These tensions automatically led to the riots in Urumqi, and immediate cause of that was brawl between Uyghurs and Han workers in Gondang province on 25th June, which everybody knows. But what we saw during that ethnic tension, on 5th of July 2019, a protest march by thousands of Uyghurs was started to demand an investigation into the riots turned violent. They tried to say that there should be investigation why why there was violent riots in Urumqi. 2 days later, the Han attacked the Uyghurs in Urumqi with knives, hammers, wooden clubs, and according to official records, 200 people lost their lives and more than 1,600 were injured. However, Uyghurs in 2013-14 claimed that more than 800 people, mostly Uyghurs, were killed by the Chinese security forces and the Han migrants. More than 4,000 Uyghurs were detained. And after 2019, the crackdown on Uyghurs intensified, and prisoners in Urumqi were filled beyond capacity, and ad hoc detention facilities, including army warehouse, were used as detention centers. However, after 2013, when Xi Jinping became the president, and he also commenced the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, by which the security, social cohesion, and synchronization gained greater attraction for CCP. Tactics deployed by China before 2013, before the BRI, to curb centrifugal tendencies in rescue Xinjiang failed to yield any result. Beijing attempted to orient Xinjiang inwards and under mainland China's cultural influence through policies and initiatives like Western Development Program. However, geographical template of Xinjiang produced axes of outside cultural influence that penetrated the region and determined that Xinjiang remained oriented outwards. For example, the Uyghurs used the infrastructure created by CCP to change their oasis identities, such as Kashgaris, Yarkandis, Khotanis, Turfanis, to an ethnic Uyghur identity and eventually a global Muslim identity. In 2013, there were some riots and some protesters. China's approach after 2013 was hardened, and after the March 2014, when Kunming railway station thing happened in which 31 people were died and more than 150 injured. Under this new hardened approach, Chang Kyong, a soldier-turned politician known for his anti-minorities policies in Tibet, was sent to Xinjiang as CCP's secretary for province in 2016. He was the person, Chen, who rolled his securitized strategy for the province and within a year made Xinjiang most high-tech surveillance zone in China. Beijing spent more than $800 million since 2017 to construct more than 1,200 detention camps across Xinjiang. Muslims are sent to these detention camps for offenses including wearing a veil, growing a long beard, or violating the government family planning policy. So, the more than 1.5 million Uyghurs were detained. This is not new to anyone. Everyone knows what happened to Xinjiang. Even Uyghur women were subjugated to forced sterilization, abortions, and implantation of counterceptive devices through state-sponsored campaigns. That led to decrease of Uyghur population naturally. For example, between 2015 and 2018, the natural population growth rate fell by 80%, from 1.6 to 0.26% in Khotan and Kashgar cities in southern Xinjiang. Khotan and Kashgar is still dominated by Uyghurs. The separation of population growth among Muslims has been severe. That 2020 Xinjiang yearbook did not present the region's official population data for the first time ever since 1949. Furthermore, the Uyghur women were detained or starved and delivered only 200 grams of drinking water per day.
Yeah. Yes. Mr. Judge, are you there? Hello? Mr. Judge? Judge? Mr. Judge? Are you there?
Sorry, Pak Veramala, Mr.
Huh?
Ijaz is left. Yeah. Maybe
he left?
Yeah.
Internet connection or what?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay, now he appeared. Yeah, okay. He came. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay.
Sorry, there was network issue.
Yeah, okay, no problem. Please go ahead. Yeah.
So after this, what is more pathetic is the silence of Muslim world towards this cultural annihilation, synchronization of Uyghurs forcefully by CCP. Most of the Muslim countries, whether it is OIC, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Pakistan, Central Asian Republics, or Malaysia, even Indonesia, I can say, they have remained silent on this cultural annihilation and forceful synchronization of Uyghurs by CCP. So even some are hand in glove with Chinese leaders. For example, when we see extraction of Uyghurs from different countries, different Muslim countries, as well as from Europe. More than 750 Uyghurs were extracted between 2018 and 2021 from different Muslim nations. So even though Uyghurs have struggled a lot and they are struggling, and they know what freedom of expression, freedom as a country, freedom as a culture is for them. They are being struggling to highlight the detention centers, to highlight the miseries of the Uyghur people who are living in Xinjiang across the globe. But somehow the silence of Muslim countries has diminished the Uyghur aspirations of struggle for socio-economic well-being as well as for freedom from CCP. This is all about my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hamza Ijazwani. He narrated a very good picture of the Xinjiang. Actually, we can see the economic exploitation as well as Han migration and the CCP's ruthless policies. Actually, Xinjiang used to be a separate, different country because before 1949 Chinese annexation, it was called East Turkestan Republic. So it was an independent country, and the people who are there are Uyghurs. And Xinjiang is a big region because its area is 1.66 million square kilometers. It is bigger than many countries in the world. But it has also vast natural resources. It is very rich in natural resources. It is the biggest province in China. So now, but that biggest province, now the Uyghur Muslims have become minorities in their own land because of the Han migration, because the CCP has imposed very strict rules on family planning, forced sterilizations, as well as rape, torture, and also Mr. Ijazwani mentioned 1.5 million people are in detention centers because they have also, he mentioned that they have a most advanced surveillance system in Xinjiang. So now the police and the security forces, they monitor every person's personal activity. Where is he going? Whether he is growing beard, whether he is praying, whether he is following any rituals or any photo of religion or any picture. So this is a very ruthless regime. So actually, according to many people, China is committing a genocide, a cultural genocide on Uyghur Muslims. Thank you very much, Mr. Ijazwani. Now we have another speaker, Dr. Dina Prapto Raharja, who has some other engagement, but she has sent her speech in a video message. So now I will say a few words about Dina Prapto Raharja. Dina Prapto Raharja is a former member of the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights from 2016 to 2018 and working currently as an associate professor in international relations at Binus University, Jakarta. Dr. Dina earned a Doctor of Philosophy in 2007 and Master of Arts 2005 from the Department of Political Science, the Ohio State University, with major in comparative politics and minor in international political economy. Her dissertation was about Indonesia, Philippines, and Singapore's governing of social security after the financial crisis 1997. Her undergraduate degree is in international relations from Department of International Relations, Universitas Indonesia. Dr. Dina joined Binus University in March 2017. She is active in sharing and teaching diplomats, government officials, and military officers in Indonesia and beyond on strategic international affairs and public policy. Also writing for several newspapers like Sindo, the Jakarta Post, Bangkok Post, and Kompas newspapers. So now please play the speech of Dr. Dina, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much, Mr. Anjaya, for the introduction. Thank you to the Center for Southeast Asian Studies to invite me to this timely and important international webinar, Global Talk about the Baren Uprising. I'm very sorry that I cannot be with you this afternoon. I have other engagements that's already scheduled. Nevertheless, I prepared a sharing points. Hopefully this will be useful for all of you. Allow me to start by introducing to you what the Baren Uprising is and what I see as relevant to the current context, and then my own framework of thinking about the Uyghur people, and a reflection, therefore, for us caring about the matter. Let's start by looking at the Baren Uprising, 1990s. The uprising itself has suppressed so many people, thousands, and since then must have been 100,000s or millions of lives. Back then, in 1990, a population of 19,000 was suppressed by the PLA of 18,000 troops. So you can imagine how savage that must have been. At that time, the government of China believed that this was a separatist movement, a premeditated movement. But if I look at the history of the Baren Uprising, we can see that, of course, this is not something that happened overnight. This was preceded by student demonstrations. And as the time arrived in 1985, about 7 universities joined in. As student demonstrators, myself, back in Indonesia in 1998, usually students will only go to the streets and express their concerns because they were very confident that their voice represent the majority of the people. Especially at that time, they saw the mysterious death of their student leader. So their determination here deserves an underlining point. So the Eastern Islamic Turkestan Party, who then took the initiative to take the momentum out of the student movements, should be seen as an addition to the student demonstrations, as the student demands, not as something that drives the demands. And this is confirmed by my reading of a book written by Anwar Rahman back in 2005, where he mentioned there that the student demonstrations back in 1985 raised 6 points of petition. Not only they wanted an end to discrimination in Xinjiang, they also mentioned about the desire to stop nuclear tests in Xinjiang, to stop illegal settlement of Han people and criminals into Xinjiang, and to stop birth control policy on the indigenous people in Xinjiang. So at that time, they already were aware about the worsening discrimination and hatred against the Uyghur. I noted the statements that the Hans saw the Uyghur male as a slave and the female as prostitute to the Hans. So, of course, this should be of concern to anybody. So in looking at this matter, I don't only look at Uyghur or Xinjiang, but I look at other parts of the world where location is strategic and potential is big. So in places like this, usually this will attract the desire for stronger control from the central authority. And why is that? Because that kind of place is a source of growth, not only for itself, but also for other parts of the country. And this kind of location is a source of economic reserves. Third, this kind of place is also an important point of connectivity. What are the implications of being in a strategically located place with strategic potential? Number one, you will see the geopolitical perspective rises. This kind of area will attract external powers to come. And this is often dangerous to make this place a proxy area for competition by external powers. And then we should also look and be aware of the economic perspectives in that area. This kind of area will be a driver of economic growth. So it's only natural that the government or the authority would seek for protection from external powers for this area. And it's also natural that domestic forces would then generate competitive behavior among themselves. Third is the perspective of enlightenment. And this I will touch on the issue of genocide, because there are studies showing that enlightened perspectives is based on the desire to create a perfect society, to the point that they don't quite care about killing people whom they think would be a challenge, would be a barrier to creating a perfect society. So in looking at this logic, we are looking at the path-dependent logic. It requires us to pay attention to the changing context, either geopolitics, economics, or enlightenment. And this is not affecting only how China responds to Xinjiang demands, but how other countries also respond to demands coming out from Xinjiang. So with that framework of thinking, I look into the OHCSR report on August 31st, 2022. The report was based on interviews with dozens of people, including 26 individuals who were detained and found patterns of torture, cruel, inhuman, degrading treatments between 2017 and 2019. So the signs of human rights violation was clear. They saw arbitrary detention, deprivation of liberty, rape, sexual violations, force of ideology, destruction of mosques, and even they were forced to swallow mysterious pills, sterilization, and abortion. And how do other countries respond to this kind of report? My first note is on the United States of America. The CRS report back in 2022 suggests that China is intentional in destroying Uyghurs' culture and identity. This was very strong of the US statement. Uyghur was a dominant ethnic group, but now only half of the population remains in that area. The TIP, or the Turkestan Islamic Party, was reported as a terrorist organization under the executive order in 2002. But then when the Trump administration came into power, he removed the TIP and the ATM from the terrorist exclusion list, saying that for more than a decade, there has been no credible evidence that ATM continues to exist. Interestingly, the United States then issued the Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act, listing foreign individuals and entities responsible for human rights abuses in Xinjiang, and then also issued the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, where American entities are not supposed to fund forced labor in Xinjiang. On the other hand, we also see the annual human rights from Biden's administration that China is doing genocide in Xinjiang, and then bans of goods coming from Xinjiang was also raised to the fore. And then in 2022 Winter Olympics, there were no diplomats from US was allowed to come. So this was a diplomatic boycott. If you look at this response from the US, the point of view is very clear. United States want to be very much present and take strong punishments against China for doing something unacceptable to Uyghurs. Interestingly, if we look at the reactions from other countries, it's more ambiguous. Back in October 2022, out of the 47 members at the UN Human Rights Council, we saw that only 17 were in favor to produce a resolution on Uyghur. And if you look at the 17 in favor, the one in green, you can see the United States was in it. 19 were against, and that include Indonesia. The one in whites are abstain, and that included India. So if you look at their reason why they took the steps, India cited that country-specific resolution will never help. Indonesia said that it's not going to work if you are trying to punish China without the consent of the state. After all, Indonesia believed that state-led initiatives to solve human rights problem is critical. And lo and behold, in Indonesia, the news on Uyghur has been very much scanty. There's not much discussion about why other countries do this and that to China, to Uyghur, and not other things. It's very limited discussion. If you look at this information, it's just basically hot news sharing about how China was accused by of doing violations of human rights, what happened in the United Nations Human Rights Council, and that the Indonesian mass organization was also took that time to visit Xinjiang. Just that. There's nothing about moving Indonesia to a certain direction that is even more stronger in pressure. So when using this kind of information, we can see that we are forced to understand what genocide means. If this is something really serious as genocide, as the United States have claimed, then we should look up what genocide is, right? Genocide is an intent to destroy in whole, part, national, ethical, racial, or religious groups. What's interesting in any genocide is what motivated people to do this genocide. Again, the point I raised earlier about Enlightenment theory come into place here, that human beings during their development stage, they sometimes come into point that they want to control the nature. They want to control even other human beings to create a perfect society. And by doing so, they want stronger control over other humans. On the other hand, we also see the reason is to act on self-defense. And the other factors is that there are ethnic prejudice and economic difficulties that make people want to behave strongly and aggressively against other groups. Decolonization divided by ethnic lines is also one reason. And the fifth reason is, of course, other countries failing to step up. But this is the point where I think we need to reflect, because Xinjiang is the largest area in China with very strong potential in economic growth. Not only Xinjiang accounts for 1/6 of China's landmass, it's located at a very strategic location. In the past, of course, this was one of the left behind area in China. But the data from the Chinese government up until 2021 suggests otherwise. China is very enthusiastic about growing Xinjiang. Its economic growth has been 7%, and different kinds of jobs were created strongly in 2021. Of course, poverty is not easy to eliminate from this area. But if you look at the kinds of products Xinjiang exported, clearly this place is important and strategic for China. Further, I also looked at the fact that Xinjiang is an important energy source for China, not only in its fossil energy rank, which is #1 of China's reserve in fossil fuel. It also has ranked 2nd on wind power and solar. It's ranked #4 on water-based energy distribution. So again, it shows how critical protecting Xinjiang for China sovereignty can be. So this is my own reflection and closing points. I think in every area across the world, domestic power clash is part of the dynamics of economic development. Indonesia have had two, not only one, not only two, many times. It's part of economic development. You have to somehow find a settlement among groups that are trying to raise control over resources. What's important is that the president or the executive branch, the chief of the executive branch, or in the case of China is the president, needs to show commitment over national unity rather than repressing diversity. In Indonesia, we saw it. In China, we don't quite see it. We saw a desire to uniform everyone. Third is that it's very important that during that time of transition, where economic is growing but clash among society happen, external intervention should be averted. It is very, very important. We have seen many instances where clashes among groups was then combined with external powers intervening. Worse, they also put money and weapons inside of that area. It becomes very destructive for economic development itself and also for the sovereignty of that country. We saw Iraq had that. We saw Afghanistan experiencing that. So we don't want that to happen also inside of Xinjiang or inside of China, because that will be a disaster for the entire region. Fourth, I think we also need to ponder about the new multipolar world that we are entering right now. It's even more sensitive nowadays to look at Xinjiang, not from the historical part alone, but as I said, from the path dependence logic. It came to a point today where it has become more sensitive for minority groups to keep only pressuring for to get aid from foreign countries. Minority groups are important parts of the country who can settle peaceful agreements actually with the majority groups. Of course, it has never been easy, but somehow a process of dialogue, a process of peace among people in the country would alleviate that violations of human rights, would alleviate the pressure of using violence and force to negotiate power sharing. At some point, every country must find their own peaceful formula to come into that power sharing negotiation. So that's a little bit from myself. Hopefully it's helpful, and we look forward to meeting you again next time, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Ibu Dina Prapto Raharja. It was an excellent speech because she was a human rights activist as well as member of the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights. So that she explained what kind of violations, human rights violations are happening in Xinjiang, and also what is the genocide, and also economic exploitation. And actually in the 1990, the Baren Uprising was a very inspiring event in the struggle for freedom of Xinjiang. So that's why she explained very clearly how it happened and what happened. So it was a very historical moment in the struggle for this people of Uyghur Muslims. So actually, we are also, she said that this is a multipolar world which is very allergic to the minorities. So we should also very clear. And also she explained how Indonesia also following China in terms of on the international forums, because last year the Indonesia voted in a resolution against China. I mean, it was a United Nations Human Rights Council resolution which wants to condemn, criticize China, but only 17 countries were supported and 19 countries opposed, in which Indonesia name was there. It was very unfortunate, because even we should have abstained at least, because like India and Malaysia also abstained. So we should have done that. So that's why it is very unfortunate, because Indonesia, but many people may ask why Indonesia did that, because China is, you can believe that China is Indonesia's biggest trading partner, biggest investor, and also it is very active in the Belt and Road Initiative of China. But these economic aspects, economic clout, cannot be compromised in terms of respecting human rights in Xinjiang. Okay, so now we have another very interesting, very popular speaker, Mr. Tegu Santosa, who is a journalist, as well as he is also the founder of the RMOL, Republik Merdeka Online. He is also very active in the Indonesian Journalists Association and Muhammadiyah, and also ASEAN Journalists Association. So Tegu Santosa was born in Medan, North Sumatra on July 30, 1975. He is the founder of Kantor Berita Politik Republik Merdeka, or RMOL. He has an interest in the media since his student days. He graduated from Universitas Pajajaran, Bandung. He received a scholarship from Ford Foundation to study his master's degree from University of Hawaii. He is very active in the Indonesian Journalists Association. He is also the chairman of Indonesian Media Network of Cyber Indonesia, JMSI. He is now working as a lecturer at Islamic State University Sharif Hidayatullah Ciputat, and also at the London School of Public Relations, Jakarta. He has visited many countries, actually. So the floor is yours, Mr. Tegu. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Anjaya. Thank you, everyone. I'm so sorry now. I'm on riding in Kalimantan, so I cannot turn on my camera because the quality of the pictures will be broken so many times. Before I begin my presentation, I would like to thank the Center of Southeast Asian Studies Indonesia for the opportunity given to me to contribute ideas in a seminar that discusses one of the most important issues in contemporary global politics. I've seen the issue of identity and sovereignty of the Uyghur nation state, and therefore the Baren Uprising taken place in April 5th, 1990, from the perspective of the debate on the existence of new states after the Second World War and the decade of decolonization that followed. And I have always seen that the international system that we have adopted and live in today is started, or when its ground zero came, from the end of the Second World War. In other words, to me, the Second World War and its end was the Big Bang to the current international system. It is undeniable that since the Great War ended with the Treaty of Versailles, the idea and identity of nation state have experienced such dynamic in many places. This dynamic fundamentally contributed to the establishment of the first East Turkestan Republic from 1933 to 1934, and also the second East Turkestan Republic from 1944 until 1949. The Uyghur people feel and believe that they have the right to define their national identity. Moreover, like other nations and cultural groups in Central Asian region and in all places on the earth, they inherit a very long history which substantially shapes the feeling of one nation, the feeling of a nation that is different and distinct from other nations. On the other hand, after the Great War, Uyghurs were locked in the midst of new giants, namely the Communist Soviet Union and the Nationalist Republic of China or Kuomintang. This fact had made the land inhabited by Uyghur nation into an arena for struggle and even a battle of interest in the context of expanding influence of parties who are worried that new conflict in the future could place them in a dangerous situation again. We see that the regime of the Chinese Communist Party, which founded the People's Republic of China, has consistently perceived a geographical imagination regarding its national boundaries. They consciously use ancient chronicle from past ages to define the boundaries of their state's power. For example, the Chinese Communist Party has always arrogantly said that the South China Sea is its traditional territorial waters, referring to the voyages made by various fleets during the Ming Dynasty in the 15th centuries, or even during the Yuan Dynasty led by Kublai Khan 2 centuries earlier. It was as if the Chinese Communist Party is the heirs to the monarchies from those ancient times. They feel they have an obligation to recover the specific geographical imagination by saging the territorial waters of other new countries that were born following the big bangs of the international system. The People's Republic of China consciously denied the UNCLOS 1982, which they signed themselves, even though it made absolutely no record, let alone acknowledgement, of communist Chinese territorial waters in the region. Of course, we would also say that the record of the presence of Yuan Dynasty and Ming Dynasty fleets in the dispute waters 100 years ago are true. However, this is completely irrelevant in the modern context, as over the time too many fleets from many places had crossed the waters. And yet new nationalities and states have existed in the region after the Big Bang and become solid entities into the international system practices. The situation is similar to the definition and boundaries of countries in Europe before the Great War became completely irrelevant after the war ended. Not only on the ocean, on the land, the Chinese Communist Party has tried to push its imagination of territory by seizing the land of neighboring polities like Uyghur and also Tibet. And they have been working on Taiwan too. War ended on December 7, 1949, where the Chinese Communist Party defeated the Kuomintang. And it is only 2 weeks after that, on December 22nd, same year, the Chinese Communist Party occupied the Republic of East Turkestan and in 1955 incorporated the land of the Uyghur people under the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region or SUAR. I think there is a strong tendency where the Chinese communists tries to ignore the international system that is working to maintain world peace and stability. This is not at all surprising, considering that they, the Chinese Communist Party, were not involved in the process of its formation. They enjoy the international system as a gift after the normalization of communist-Chinese relation with the US in 1970s. Following that normalization, the Republic of China was removed from the United Nations, and the Communist People's Republic of China replaced its position. So basically, we are talking about the consequences of that series of events where a gigantic power finally has been born, which has the ability to dictate the global landscape. I hope that this discussion can generate new awareness and solidarity in defending the fate of Uyghur nation. I thank you, Mr. Anjaya.
Thank you very much, Tegu. Thank you very much. It was a good presentation. How Tegu has explained to us how the Uyghur people who had their first Eastern Turkestan Republic in in the 1930s, and also in 1940s they have second East Turkestan Republic. And also he explained about the rising China is a major threat to present Asia as well as the world, because China is very aggressive in pursuing its policies. Like, for example, it occupied Xinjiang, and also it occupied Tibet, which where it has been suppressing the local people, their culture, their language, their religion. So at the same time, China also claims 90% of the South China Sea as its own, because which is very illogical and acceptable, because China signed and ratified the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, in 1982. But at the same time, based on its 9-dash line map, it claims a territory in the in Indonesia's exclusive economic zone, North Natuna Sea, which is far away, because maybe more than 1,000 kilometers far away, but it claims as its own, because according to the UNCLOS, every coastal state is entitled for land 200 nautical miles. So it is very illogical, and this is one. And also now China wants to annex Taiwan. So Taiwan is another victim of China. So these are the things which are posing a major threat to our world. And that's why, Tegu, thank you very much. You have explained the Uyghur issue very clearly. So now, today I have a dual role I have to play. Not only the moderator, I am also one of the speakers. Just I will introduce myself. My name is Veeramalla Anjaya. I am now working as a senior research fellow of Center for Southeast Asian Studies. And also I used to work as a senior journalist and worked for the Jakarta Post from 1995 to 2020. I have a Master of Philosophy degree in Southeast Asian and Southwest Pacific Studies from the School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. And also I have a master's degree from University of Madras, and also I have a bachelor's degree from Usmania University, Hyderabad. And so this is my brief biodata. And also now I will present my paper. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Xinjiang, a region under Chinese occupation since 1949, is a vast area with 1.66 million square kilometers of land. During its more than 2,500 years, next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, okay. During its more than 2,500 years of history, it had experienced intermittent phases of autonomy and occasional independence. Chinese imperial powers controlled Xinjiang only 425 years ago. This was mentioned by Ijazwani also. It officially became a province of the Chinese Empire in 1878 under king rulers. Next slide, please. Yeah. In November 1933, the Xinjiang natives, who are known as Uyghurs, established their first East Turkestan Republic, or Turkish Islamic Republic of Eastern Turkestan. which survived until April 1934. In 1944, they established the Second East Turkestan Republic, which lasted until 1949. Next slide, please. In 1949, the People's Liberation Army troops of China invaded Xinjiang and incorporated it into the People's Republic of China. In 1955, the Chinese government converted Xinjiang into the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, SUAR, which is now the biggest province in China. Next slide, please. Since 1949, Communist China has launched a massive Sinicization program by sending thousands of Han migrants to Xinjiang. This has led to a massive increase in the Han population, there from 5% to 40% during the period between 1949 and 1980. Meanwhile, the Uyghur population fell from 80% to 45.8%. Today, Xinjiang has 25.89 million people, but only 11 million Uyghur Muslims are living there. Next slide, please. Uyghurs belong to an ethnic Turkic group and their religion is Islam. They have their own language and culture. Other ethnic Turkic tribes like Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, Tajiks, and Mongols also live in Xinjiang as minorities. Before 1949, Xinjiang had 29,545 mosques, although most of them were destroyed during the Cultural Revolution. Now only 1,400 mosques remain operational. China has also imposed many strict rules on religious practices there. Next slide, please. According to a recent report by Amnesty International, a respected human rights group, Uyghur Muslims face systematic state-organized mass imprisonment, torture, and persecution amounting to crimes against humanity. Chinese authorities have taken extreme measures to root out the religious traditions, current practices, and local languages of Uyghur Muslims, as well as other Islamic ethnic groups. As a result, Uyghur Muslims began to revolt against the cruel rule of China. Next slide, please. Yeah. On April 5, 1990, there was a big protest against the communist regime in Baren, a town in Xinjiang. Uyghur Muslims under the leadership of Jaidin Yusuf, the leader of the East Turkestan Islamic Party, surrounded local government offices, demanding an immediate halt to Han migration to Xinjiang, forced abortions on Uyghur women, and restrictions to practice their religion. According to Chinese government sources, the protesters were also demanding independence for Xinjiang. The protest grew quickly, causing China to deploy 130 policemen to break the stage. This resulted in violence between police and protesters, in which several protesters and 6 policemen were killed. Next slide, please. Yeah. From April 5 to April 10, 1990, a massive crackdown on protesters was conducted by the PLA and police forces. Several protesters were killed. According to the Chinese government, 23 people, including 7 security personnel, were killed during the 5-day unrest. But the actual figure might be doubled or tripled. But police also arrested 7,900 Uyghurs Muslims in Baren. Next slide, please. After the April 5 uprising, the Chinese government tightened security and started to prosecute Uyghur Muslims. More than 1 million were arbitrarily detained in Xinjiang re-education camps. Those who were not detained faced intense surveillance, most severe religious restrictions, forced labor, and forced sterilizations. It was a cultural genocide. Next slide, please. In 1996, China started the Strike Hard campaign targeting splitism and illegal religious activities. It monitored religious activities in Xinjiang. Only mullahs appointed by the government were allowed to lead prayers in the mosque. Next slide, please. Yeah. But the campaign proved counterproductive as a year later. In February 1997, hundreds of Uyghurs protested in Yining near the Kazakhstan border for Xinjiang's independence. Security forces killed more than 10 people to crush the independent movement. There was another protest in Aksu, which was also suppressed by the government. Next slide, please. On July 5, 2009, a violent protest erupted in Urumqi over a fight between Uyghur and Han workers. Hans attacked Uyghurs with knives, hammers, and wooden clubs on July 7 and killed several people. In response to this, the Chinese government launched a clampdown in Urumqi. According to its reports, 200 people lost their lives and more than 1,600 were injured. But Uyghurs claim that 800 people were killed by security forces and Hans. In addition, more than 4,000 Uyghurs were arrested. Violent protests continued to occur in 2013 and 2014 in Xinjiang. Next slide, please. China defends its repressive policies in the name of its fighting against extremism, separatism, and terrorism in Xinjiang. It has built one of the world's most sophisticated surveillance system and a vast network of hundreds of grim transformation through education centers, which are known as internment camps throughout Xinjiang. The Chinese authorities have created a dystopian, I quote a statement from the Amnesty International. The Chinese authorities have created a dystopian hell scope on a staggering scale in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. Uyghurs, Kazakhs, and other Muslim minorities face crimes against humanity and other serious human rights violations that threaten to erase their religious and cultural identities. It should shock the conscience of humanity that massive numbers of people have been subjected to brainwashing, torture, and other degrading treatment in internment camps, while millions more live in fear amid a vast surveillance apparatus, said Agnes Kalamard, the Amnesty International Secretary General. Next slide, please. More than 2 billion Muslims are now observing the fast in this holy month of Ramadan. But Communist China has instructed Muslims in Xinjiang, next slide, please, that their children should not fast. The authorities have also made Uyghur children report whether their parents are fasting or not. According to Dilshoy Rushid, the spokesperson of the Munich-based Uyghur Human Rights Group, World Uyghur Congress, Chinese authorities have implemented a 24-hour monitoring system in 1,811 villages of Xinjiang, including home inspections of Uyghur families. Next, China has been targeting Uyghur Muslims with its ethnic unity campaign, under which the authorities pressure Uyghur families to follow non-Muslim traditions like drinking alcohol and eating pork. Rape, sexual exploitation, and forced sterilization of Uyghur Muslim women are rampant in many of the re-education camps in Xinjiang. The government encourages and promotes intermarriage between Uyghur Muslims and Han Chinese in Xinjiang. Actually, United States President Joe Biden recently expressed his solidarity towards Uyghur Muslims. Together with our partners, the United States stands in solidarity with Muslims who continue to face oppression, including Uyghurs in the People's Republic of China, Rohingya in Burma, and other Muslim communities facing persecution around the world, Biden said on March 23, 2023. Next slide, please. China has been using its economic clout to save its face from international criticism about its treatment of Uyghurs. Many Muslim countries, including Indonesia, home to the world's largest Muslim population, have remained silent or openly supported the inhuman actions of China in Xinjiang because of the economic benefits it provides. In October 2022, 19 countries, including Indonesia, Kazakhstan, Qatar, Pakistan, the United Arab Emirates, and Uzbekistan, voted in favor of China during the United Nations Human Rights Council. On the other hand, 17 countries voted against China and 11 abstained. Next slide, please. Many Uyghur groups recently urged Muslim countries to condemn China's genocide in Xinjiang. On various occasions, Uyghur organizations have expressed their great disappointment over the silence of majority countries on the Uyghur issue, a genocide which has involved the arbitrary detention of millions of Uyghurs in concentration camps, where they are forced to renounce their religious beliefs and practices, Uyghur group said in a statement recently. Next slide, please. Yeah, the Uyghur people will never give up their fight for their rights, both inside and outside Xinjiang. The Baren Uprising of 1990 has become an inspiration for Uyghur Muslims worldwide to continue their fight against Chinese oppression. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah, today we have a,
Thank you, sir, for highlighting historically the Uyghur question. It was my privilege to listen to your good self, and it was no, sir. It was a presentation which was made historically that how Uyghurs faced many problems, and those problems has increased from time to time, and what is the role of international community. It was a presentation full of material, full of matter, and full of things that were highlighted in a crisp and sharp way. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Ijazwani. So now we can move to a new speaker who is discussant. Her name is Madi. She is from Myanmar. She has done her postgraduate degree from the Diponegoro University in Indonesia. So she is working as a junior researcher at the Center for Southeast Asia Studies. So she is very much active in languages as well as social media and other things. So we can hear about her views about on the Uyghur issue. Madi, that the floor is yours. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for a kind introduction, Pak. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I would like to discuss upon historical events on Xinjiang Uyghurs issue with the title China's Must Stop Persecuting Uyghurs Muslims. Xinjiang, which has vast natural resources, is a landlocked autonomous region which is under now Chinese occupation with some 25 million residents. It used to be an independent country in 1933 called First East Turkestan Republic. However, the republic was short-lived. Its geographical locations and natural wealth became its vulnerability. So its citizens then established the Second East Turkestan Republic (SETR), which survived from 1944 until China's inventions in 1949. So the Xinjiang Uyghurs Autonomous Region (SUAR) was created by China on October 1st, 1955. So the people of East Turkestan are called Uyghurs. And they are ethnically and culturally Turkic people. So they practice a moderate form of Islam. The Xinjiang region has been under China-reflected rule for many years, with deliberate policy opposing centuries-old traditions, cultures, and religions of Uyghur people. So what happened on April 5, 1990? So on April 5, 1990, there was a big protest against brutal communist regime in Baren, a town in Xinjiang. So Uyghur Muslims under the leadership of Yusuf, the leaders of the East Turkestan Islamic Party, surrounded the local government offices, demanding an immediate halt to migration to Xinjiang, forced abortions on Uyghur women, and freedom to practice their religion. So according to Chinese government sources, the protesters were also demanding independence for Xinjiang. So China launched a massive syndication program by sending thousands of hand migrants to Xinjiang. It imposed a lot of strict rules on religious practice in Xinjiang, whose majority of the population practice Islam. So before 1949, Xinjiang has 29,545 mosques, and most of them were destroyed during the Cultural Revolution. Now only 1,400 mosques are operational. The Han migrations in Xinjiang has led to an increase of Han population from 5% to 40% during the period between 1949 to 1980, while Uyghurs' population fell down like from 80% to 45.8%. So the April 5 protests grew in numbers very quickly, and the protester had laid a siege on government offices. China deployed 130 policemen to break the siege. The violence broke between the police and protesters, in which the several protesters and 6 policemen were killed. So from April 5 to April 10, a massive crackdown on protesters was conducted by PLA and police forces. Several protesters were killed. Like according to government, like 23 people, including 7 security personnel, were killed during the 5-day unrest. The actual figures might be either double or triple from the government version. Police arrested 7,900 Uyghur Muslims in Baren. So after the April 5 uprising, the government tightened the security and launched a massive crackdown on Uyghur Muslims. It was a major attempt by Uyghur Muslims to demand independence for Xinjiang from China. More than 1 million Muslims have been arbitrarily detained in Xinjiang. The re-education camps are just one part of the government crackdown on Uyghurs, and people who were not detained face intense surveillance and more severe religious restrictions and forced labor and forced sterilization. It was a cultural genocide in Xinjiang. So in 1996, China started the Strike Hard campaign, targeting splitisms and illegal religious activities. The Communist Party of China monitored religious activities in Xinjiang, and mullahs appointed by the government led the prayers in the mosques. But the Strike Hard campaign proved counterproductive. In February 1997, like hundreds of Uyghurs protested in Yinin near the Kazakhstan border and demanded for Xinjiang's independence. Security forces killed more than 10 people to crush the independence movement in Xinjiang. In Kaksu, there was another protest, which was also suppressed harshly by the government. So on July 5, 2009, there was a violent protest in Urumqi over a fight between Uyghurs and Han workers. The Hans attacked the Uyghurs with knives, hammers, wooden clubs on July 7 and killed several Uyghurs. The government launched a major crackdown in Urumqi. According to the government reports, 200 people lost their lives and more than 1,600 were injured. But Uyghurs claim that 800 people were killed by security forces and Hans, and more than 5,000 Uyghurs were arrested. There were violent protests and attacks in 2013 and 2014 in Xinjiang. But China defends its repressive policy in the name of its fight against extremism, separatism, and terrorism in Xinjiang. Uyghurs are suffering a lot under brutal communist regime. So these crimes against humanity is still ongoing, and China must stop persecuting Uyghurs Muslims. They have been destroying Uyghurs' religions, language, and their culture since 1949. So international community must put pressure on China to stop its repressive policy in Xinjiang. So I would like to conclude my discussion here. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Madi. Thank you, Madi. It is a good presentation because you mentioned about the Baren Uprising and Han migration and the Chinese repressive policies in Xinjiang. So now we are entering into very interesting discussion. We have enough time. We have a long time actually. So now one of our participants have asked one question. So the question is, why do the Muslim world is silent about Uyghur Muslims? Why do many Muslim countries are openly supporting China? Mr. Ijazwani, do you want to answer?
Yeah.
Why Muslim world is silent? Yeah.
See, Muslim world, there are many factors, but most important factors are China's rising economic prowess in the Muslim world itself. they have, through BRI, invested in Muslim countries so much of money that made Muslim countries silent. Second thing is the regimes in Muslim world, especially if you see in Middle East, Central Asia, or to some extent in Pakistan or Iran, they are autocratic in nature. And that helped the Muslim countries to be more autocratic with the help of China. And that was another reason. The third and most important reason is the US's and West's interventional policy that they started after 1990 in Muslim world. See what happened in Syria, what happened in Iraq, what happened in Afghanistan. So that created a sense of loneliness among Muslim worlds, and they thought that okay, China is a good player, good international player that is not interested in our internal matters. That was another reason. But reason that the main reason was the Chinese Islamic Association. Whenever a Muslim leader visited Beijing, the Chinese Islamic Association was omnipresent everywhere, highlighting the Islamic legacy of China, how China has been protecting the Islamic architecture, Islamic faith, because the Chinese Islamic Association is a association which is being monitored and kept by CCP. So these were the reasons. And another reason, most important reason is that most of the Muslim countries have, I have written almost 2-3 papers on it. Most of the Muslim countries, especially Islamic world, has helped globally China when it comes to human rights violations in China, especially among Xinjiang. We see on global forums last time when there was a voting that whether we should debate the human rights violations in Xinjiang or not, most of the Muslim countries voted against this notion of USA. So these were the things which made China more belligerent and more repressive in Xinjiang. Because Muslim countries are so much dependent nowadays on China, economically, politically, socially, that they remain silent on this issue. Somehow, some of the countries or some of the civil society members try to highlight this thing. I will give you best example. Pakistani world famous cricketer Shahid Afridi once wrote a tweet on the Chinese cultural aggression, Chinese genocide, what is happening in Xinjiang against Uyghur Muslims. So within 4 hours, he was forced to delete that tweet by the Pakistani army because Pakistan is mostly dependent on China. So that is how they somehow buy the perception of Muslim world when it comes to Uyghurs. Secondly, the another important point is Uyghurs have been struggling from last 1 decade to highlight the miseries the Uyghurs are facing in China. But most of the Muslim countries are remaining silent every time because they know if we will say something, then China will not help us economically or on global forum. That is how things work. I think it has sufficed his needs and answer. I have answered his question. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ijazwani. I agree with you because of this economic clout and its investments as well as trade are influencing many of the Islamic countries. I agree with you. Many of the Islamic countries where democracy is absent. But of course, even though we do have democracy in Indonesia, but we voted at the United Nations in support of China. So anyway, so now I want to ask the same question to Mr. Tegu. Why do the Muslim world is silent about Uyghur Muslims? why do many Muslim countries are openly supporting China? Mr. Tegu, we want to hear from your side.
Yeah. I think I agree with what Mr. Hamza just said just now. It is due to the superiority of Chinese economy, and also at the same time, the contenders, the other side, we may say it is US, for example, or states who follow US. Seems like they have their own internal problem, and they are losing their grip in global politics. So this Muslim country, as you mentioned before, of course they need partners in development process in their own respective countries, and the only partners ready to do that is China. And as we know that just recently, the senior diplomat of China, they are successful in in put a peace between Saudi Arabia and the Republic of Iran, for example. I think I should say that it is a great achievement. Yeah, never happened before, and it is beyond of my imagination that these two Muslim countries finally they can talk, they can sit with the Chinese as a broker, but why this kind of things happen? This is because there is an emptiness in global politics, and China is the only parties who can fulfill this emptiness. They are the one who has the real powers. I mean, if you are talking about Saudi Arabia or and Iran, for example, I think they're just supposed to be the peace broker, but not in this case, because of course we cannot compare, the capability that Indonesia has and China has. Yeah, this is only to add what Mr. Hamza has said.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Tegu. You are right, because there is an emptiness in the in the international politics. Yeah. So now we have another question from the participants. What is the significance of Baren Uprising in the history of Uyghur Muslims? What is the significance of Baren Uprising? Mr. Ijazwani, can you answer?
What is the question? Sorry.
Yeah, what is the significance of Baren Uprising in the history of Uyghur Muslims? What is the significance?
See, it was first time because what I saw during my field survey in Xinjiang, especially in southern Xinjiang.
Yeah.
Baren incident became a force that the within fault lines which were created by geography and history of the region were diminished. For example, the identity of Kashgaris, Yarkandis, Khotanis, that was diminished by this Baren incident, and the Uyghur identity which came into being was because of Baren incident. The Uyghur identity which was of all the Uyghurs Uzbeks which are living under CCP rule, they became one. That was the significance of Baren incident. And that Uyghur identity, which was created after Baren incident, became the global Muslim identity after 2009. So these incidents created an identity of Uyghurs as a global Muslim identity. That was the importance of Baren incident to me. For example, when I went to Kashgar, to that Sunday market in 2014, I saw Muslims were praying on a mat in an open field within the Kashgar Sunday market. Then, when I tried to interview them, one was Kazakh. He was living in Kashgar. Another was Uzbek, and the four persons who were, one was among them from Kashgar, one was from Yarkand, and another was from Khotan. When I asked them, because historically when we see you were having different identities, Kashgari, Yarkandi, Khotan. They said that we have been pressurized by China to create an identity that is global Uyghur Muslim identity. That is how, to me, Baren incident played a part that nowadays everyone knows that in Xinjiang there live a Muslim community. Secondly, if it was the Chinese tactics, they tried to synchronize the Uyghurs, but in another way, Uyghurs used the same tactics to become a global Muslim identity after Baren incident. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ijazwani. You are right, because it created a special identity for Uyghur Muslims, Baren Uprising. So now we want to hear from Mr. Tegu. What is the significance of Baren Uprising? Tegu.
Yeah, at least the uprising became one of the important milestone in history of Uyghur peoples struggling to get their own sovereignty. And I think more and more people in the world, especially today, through your discussion, today discussion, people will get more understanding about the identity of Uyghur and also Muslim people living in that in that area. I remember last February when I was in Istanbul, I met with one of Uyghur friends. His name is Abdurrahman, but he rejected to mention his family name because he is worried that if only he mentioned his family name, and then if I put it on the news, then these Chinese communists far away in China can can treat his family in Uyghur. He said to me that he's been living in Istanbul like from 2010 because he got a scholarship, and then he studied in Istanbul and in Ankara, and then already now he's working and also already got married with Uyghur ladies, also from Uyghur, but nowadays living in Istanbul. And he doesn't know what happened to the family, to the fathers, to the brothers and the sisters, because the last time he contacted them, it was like in 2000. I forget, it is in my article. I think it is like in 2018 or 17. And from that year, he doesn't have any news regarding to the family. So I think Baren Uprising, it maintains the identity of Uyghur as a Muslim people, a society that living under the pressure of communist China. And this story
Hello, Tegu.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Did you finish? Tegu, did you finish? We have some internet connection problem. Yeah. Hello? Hello, Tegu.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you finish?
Yeah, I finished.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Tegu. You are right. Baren Uprising is a historic milestone in the history of the Uyghurs, and also it created a special identity for Uyghur Muslims themselves. Now we have another question. Yeah. Okay. Another question. China defends its repressive policies in the name of fighting separatism, radicalism, and terrorism in Xinjiang. But what about the rights of Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities in China? Mr. Ijazwani, can you answer?
Yeah. See, it is not radicalization, separatism, or extremism in Xinjiang. It is actually the repressive policies of communist China that created an alienation of Uyghurs of Kazakh Muslims, of Kyrgyz Muslims, of Uzbek Muslims who are Tajik Muslims who are living in Xinjiang. So that alienation by somehow became a tendency of centrifugal, going away from China and create their own nation. And it is, see, what happened when USA started war against terrorism, they Chinese communist government used that war against terrorism to suppress more Uyghurs. And the war against terrorism became a tool for China to create the perception among the global world that we are also facing separatism, terrorism, radicalization, and extremism in Xinjiang. It is not true. Actually, it is the Chinese project which Z called Chinese rejuvenation. And under this project, they have done what they have did in Hong Kong, what they are doing in Xinjiang after 2013. It is for the scholars to think that how
Hello, Mr. Ijaz. We have some internet problem. Hello. Hello. Hello.
I think we lost him again.
Yeah. It's okay. So now I think we can hear from Tegu. What about the rights of Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities in China? Because China talks about defending its repressive policies in the name of fighting terrorism, radicalism, etc. So what are your views, Tegu?
Yeah, couple years ago when I was in Shanghai, I met with the leader of Muslim society in Shanghai.
Yeah.
And one of our discussion was about the problem that Muslim in China faced recently. And he also mentioned about that. He also mentioned that they fight at least three issues, three big issues: terrorism, fundamentalism, and then separatism. So even for this Muslim society in Shanghai, the issues of Uyghur, Muslim people living in Uyghur, is an issue related to these three uh, basic issues: terrorism, fundamentalism, and separatism. Of course, we understand that it is that the society, Muslim society in Shanghai, they are monitored by the government. But from the discussion, I can get understanding that they really believe that this is what happened in Uyghur. That the Muslim people living in Uyghur are trying. Uh, I mean, the struggle to get their own sovereignty is seen as a separatism by their own brothers and sister Muslim in other part of China. Yeah, but of course this is because of this is what they learn. This is what they do know since they were young. I mean, this is how the communist China teach the people about Uyghur struggle, and seems to me like they buy it, and yeah, I think this is one of the remaining problems: how to teach uh, other Muslim groups and also minority groups in China about the problem in Uyghurs.
Yeah, thank you, Tegu. Thank you very much for your very positive answer. Because the minorities are suffering in China a lot. Not only the Uyghurs, but also Tibetans, also Kazakhs, also other ethnic Turkish tribes. So they are they are facing a fundamental question that they cannot follow their religion, their culture, their language. So it is very bad. The Chinese government is oppressing them. Now our participants have asked another important question. What international community should do to help Uyghur Muslims? What international community should do? For Ijaz, you want to answer?
Yeah. Sorry, it was
Yeah. Okay. No
there was
problem. Yeah.
there was a connection problem. What was the question?
What international community should do to help Uyghur Muslims?
First of all, I think the world community should come together because China is now becoming so brilliant. We can see what they are doing in South China Sea, what they are doing in Xinjiang, what they are trying to do in Taiwan. So this is their policy to become more brilliant. It is not about their economic power and other thing. It is about their ideology. So I think not only the Western world, but also the West should rethink its strategy towards Muslim world. For example, West should think of its relationship with Turkey, relationship with Middle East, and relationship with Iran. So they can come together on global forums and pressurize China, not only economically but politically, to to save the lost cultural reminiscence of Uyghur Muslims. And that will help us to create a peaceful and prosperous Eurasia. And that is good for globe also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ijazwani. You rightly said that international community must come together to condemn China. That is very important. But including the Muslim world, I think mainly the main drawback is with the Muslim world. They are only looking for their economic interests. For example, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, like Kazakhstan, they are all looking for their dependence on China for their selling their oil to China. So that is the problem. So, Tegu, would you like to comment on this what international community should do to help Uyghur Muslims?
Yeah, this is what I mentioned in my presentation, that actually we have to grow a new awareness regarding to these issues, because regardless of China achievement in economic in the world, but seems to me like China is trying to deny many of international system practices. In my presentation, I give you an example about what China has done in South China Sea by seizing and occupying neighboring country waters, waters territory, by emphasizing the old stories from 100 years ago. So actually, this is what they are doing, and actually, this is a new trend for the world. But of course, because of their let's say capability and economy, they can work together with a new emerging power in the world that also needs support from China. So this is our problem. So that is why I think until this stage, what we need is to grow a new awareness by promoting this kind of issues again and again, by collecting as many as possible people, and then uh, uh, educate our themselves about the new threat. In Indonesia there is a saying about serigala berbulu domba. In English, it can be like wolf using sheep feathers, sheep skin. Actually, it is wolf, but he wears a sheep skin, so it looks like sheep. But actually, inside it is wolf. So this is what happened with China now. So many countries already been a sample of problematic situation that we have with China, including Indonesia itself. We also experience many problems with China. But yeah, because at the same time we also need a new partner in economic development. Then somehow we close other eyes and then open another eyes. Yeah, so this is what we need to grow a new awareness. To grow a new awareness that we have to respect international regulation. We have to respect the big bang of international system, which is what I said in 1945. Of course, the decade of decolonization is a new era when new countries, new states established, you know, uh, after the end of the Second World War. And I think if you're looking at the historical accounts, the second is Turkestan republics. They erupted in those area. I mean, in those time, in those particular time, from 44 until 49. But it is only after the Kuomintang nationalist Chinese was defeated by communist China, then China occupied East Turkestan Republic, because they believe in what I mentioned already in my presentation as imaginative geographical boundaries. So they think that they have to recover all of this, territory left by the ancient kingdoms, ancient dynasty 100 years ago.
Yeah, thank you, Tegu. You are right. You are right. There is a time for international community to raise the awareness of the Uyghur issue. You're right. So now I think we are entering into the closing remarks because we have a big question. What is the future of Xinjiang? What is the future of Xinjiang? So I want every speaker must give their closing remarks. We will start with Ijazwani. Please, sir. Ijazwani, the floor is yours. Your closing remarks. Yeah.
Future of Xinjiang and future of Uyghurs to me remained bleak. But it is the global world, how they come together to save the last reminiscence of Uyghur culture, the rich civilizational culture they have acquired through Silk Route, and the secular culture, the secular identity, the secular culture they achieved, which is against the Chinese policy of rejuvenation. Because we have to see that how Uyghur culture evolved. And that is why China became more antagonistic towards this culture. And simply, it is how global world and West and East comes together, especially the countries in Southeast Asia, South Asia, in Eurasia, in Middle East, and in Africa. When they will come together to force China to stop this cultural genocide of Uyghur Muslim minority in Xinjiang, that is the only hope that can save the future of Uyghurs in China. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ijazwani. Now we want to hear from Mr. Tegu Santosa. Your closing remarks, please.
Yeah, I just want to underline that as a part of Muslim community, we must respect the international system that was created to maintain world peace and stability. And since the Communist Party of China won the civil war against the National Party of Kuomintang in 1949, we've seen that many times. People's Republic of China or Communist Party of China, they broke many value in international system. Occupying Uyghur is one of sample. It was in 1949, and then in 1950, they occupied Tibet, yeah. And then nowadays they're trying to regain control of Taiwan. And since 2009, they again claim South China Sea using this 9-dash line. And even though the tribunal court already said that they against UNCLOS 1982 in the case against the Philippines, it was in 2016, I think, the decision. But again, China said nothing, and didn't want to follow the international law. So this strong proof to me that China is against international system. But yeah, they have all capacity, to bribe the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Tegu. You're right, because China's aggressiveness is affecting the whole world, because you rightly said they occupied the Xinjiang illegally, and also they occupied Tibet, and now they want to occupy the Taiwan. So and also now they want to claim the South China Sea. So which is, I mean, of course, you rightly said the Permanent Court of Arbitration clearly said this 9-dash line claim is illegal and invalid. So that's why the China doesn't want to follow the international principles and international rules. It is the only country in the region which do not have a trust of anybody, including Indonesia. I think many Indonesians also do not trust.
Anjaya.
Yeah.
Mr. Anjaya, and just recently I realized why they do not want to follow international system.
Yeah.
Because they did not join in the formation of it. They didn't join. They got a gift, after the normalization of relationship with the US. So I think we have to think again about this.
Okay. So that's why we are very clear that there is a lack of trust from China, because nobody trusts China, because only it wants to bribe many countries are to lure with their investments, with their trade, etc. But we are facing this big problem. Now I want to ask Madi, you want to add your comments?
But so in my opinion, that Uyghurs issue it does not only represent the Muslim community, but it represents every indigenous community and every minority issues that is happening in the whole world. So this human rights abuses and everything, this can happen to everyone. If we are now silent, like, because it is not because us, if we are silent like this, it can happen to us. Like the power group where we always abusing the human right abuse or any kind of abuse to the minority groups. So it can happen to us too. Like it should not be that not just China, but any kind of power group can abuse us. So that's why the international community continues to call for an end to human rights abuses and protection of the rights of these Uyghur people. Yeah, thank you, Bob.
Yeah, thank you, Madi. You rightly said it's very good. This is not only the question of Muslims, but it is all human beings. So human rights must be respected everywhere. So, okay, thank you very much for all the speakers, Dr. Ijazwani, Dr. Tegu Santosa, and Ibu Dina Vishnu, and Madi. So I express you people all very sincere thanks to you for participating in this international webinar. It will be posted on our Facebook, YouTube. So you can watch it or you can share it with the YouTube link with your friends, etc. Thank you very much. A very nice good evening to everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you. But we want to take a photo, Jihan, group photo.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ijazwani is there?
No, but
okay, you take three of us, at Dina, Ibu Dina's photo also you can mention.
One, two, three.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you, Bob.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Pak Tegu. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pak.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Anjaya.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr.
Thank you.
Madi.
Bye.